Hi, we're here on Lake Lanier today to talk about my tactical trolling techniques. But before we do that, I want to remind everybody to pray when you go fishing, because Psalm 8 says that God made man a little lower than the angels and crowned us with glory and honor to rule over his creation, over the beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens, and what passes through the seas. So I like to pray before I go fishing for the Lord to help me rule over the fish of whatever body of water I'm fishing. And also I like to pray for safety, to return safely and all that kind of stuff, and to have my eyes open in case anybody's in need of assistance on the water. Alright, so with tactical trolling, it's different from precision trolling. Precision trolling is like a precision rifle, where the goal is you mark fish on the sonar at a certain depth, and you try and fish as many lures as possible down at the specific depth where you're marking fish or where you're marking the most fish. But there are times of year in places like Lake Lanier when the fish are spread out both horizontally throughout the lake and vertically throughout the water column. So with tactical trolling, precision trolling is like a precision rifle. Tactical trolling is more like a tactical shotgun. The goal is to spread the lures throughout the water column. So, with precision trolling, if you got all your lures 20 feet down and, you pass through a bait ball that's between 10 feet down on the surface, those lures aren't going to pass through that bait ball, and those lures are unlikely to pick up the predators that are feeding on all that big bait ball down there. So with tactical trolling, the goal is to have lures throughout the water column, and so let's talk about how we do that. Alright, one of the things that we do in tactical trolling is we try and fish as many rods at a time as we can to have a nice selection of lures and a lot of coverage. So that rod out there in the front is it's an 8-foot rod, and the depth is controlled because we're using a Walker deeper diver or a dipsy diver about this size, and you can see this one's set to 3 right. That one's pulling as far as it can to the right to help get us some horizontal separation. And we're using Power Pro Depth Hunter line to control the depth out. And right now we've got that one about 60 feet back because our charts tell us that that'll put the lure about 10 feet down. Alright, so that's one of our 9 rods we've got out right now. The second rod we got out right now is this one here. And this one, we're using a line counter reel, and it's got about 100 feet of line out, and it's got a very similar dipsy diver, Walker deeper diver, and I think they're being made by Dreamweaver, is a company making those diving planters right now. So this one's got 100 feet of line out, which puts its lure about 20 feet down, because that one is set, this one's set at 3, that one is set to 1.5 right, so that it doesn't get tangled with the one in front of it. Alright, now as we move back along the right side of the boat, the third rod in the holder is actually a spinning rod, and that one doesn't really have a way to measure the line out precisely, because that one's got a rattle trap on it, and we put the rattle trap anywhere from 100 feet back on days when there's more boat traffic to sometimes 200 feet back, because that rattle trap will run about 5 feet deep at 2 miles an hour, and it's not real sensitive to how much line we have back. So that's one of our shallower running lures. Then the fourth one on the right side, all the way back on the right side, is we're running a larger Walker deeper diver on it. We're running a diving planter about this size. It's set to 0, so it's trolling straight back. And 50 feet of line out puts that one about 20 feet deep, which is where that one happens to be right now. Alright, now our next one is in the middle. We've got a really big Walker deeper diver on it. You can see it's got a lot of drag. It's pulling really hard. So that one, we've got about 40 feet of line out, and that one's about 25 feet deep. We'll probably put that one a little deeper. In my first pass, I like to be able to run up shallower into like 30 feet of water, so I don't put that one quite as deep. But once I see if nothing much is interesting is happening in the shallower water, I'll let that one out a little further, and that one's my deep one straight back. All right, so as we repeat the idea on the left side of the boat, everything is the same, more or less in the mirror image. So that 8-foot rod up there on the front left has a walker diver or a dipsy diver pulling 3 left, so it's pulling hard to the left, but it's only got about 60 feet of line out, so that lure's running about 10 feet deep, which is what the chart tells me and my experience tells me with that dipsy diver and that amount of line out. The second one on the left, counting from the front, is about 100 feet of line out with that dipsy diver set to 1.5 left. And then the third one back is that one's actually got a whopper plopper on it, and the whopper plopper is probably about 200 feet back today, but it's just running on top. It doesn't really need fancy line counting, depth hunter line, or a line counter reel. So I just can see where that one is on the top, and I adjust it accordingly. When there's not a whole lot of boat traffic like today, I'll run the whopper plopper 150 or 200 feet back. With a lot of boat traffic, I'll pull it in and like to keep close to 100 feet. Okay, and then the fourth one back on the left, again, is running one of those larger dipsy divers or one of the larger walker deeper divers, straight back, set to 0, so that 50 feet of line out puts it about 20 feet deep. So right now, we're covering depths from the surface down to about 20 or 25 feet deep, and if we see something deeper, or once I commit to keeping the boat in water deeper than about 30 feet deep, we can let some of those a little further back, and we'll be covering more vertical spread in the water. I also like to keep a whopper plopper handy just on a spinning reel, so that when I see fish busting the top, cast to whatever top water action, and I can just cast and retrieve and catch fish on top water while I've got the 9 other lines out doing their work with the tactical trolling. So that's pretty much it. Our forward speed, we like to keep it 2 miles an hour, optimal, or most of the time when we're tactical trolling. Sometimes if you see some fish a little deeper than you're running your lures, you can shift down or throttle down to about 1.5 miles an hour, and then the lures will run about 5 feet deeper when you slow it down to 1.5 miles an hour. They'll all kind of quickly drop to 5 feet deeper. And then if you see fish a little higher up in the water column than you have to run the lures, or maybe you get over a hump or a feature that you want to run the lures a little higher so they don't snag, or they get into a bait ball that's a little higher, you can go ahead and accelerate to about 2.5 miles an hour, and then the lures will tend to run about 5 feet shallower than they usually run if you accelerate to 2.5 miles an hour. So when you start tactical trolling, I recommend that you don't try and start right away with 9 rods at a time, because there are a lot of subtleties to it. How do you steer the boat? You need to make gentle turns, no sudden turns, otherwise you end up with a lot of tangles. You also need to learn the bottom contours a little bit. If you're running your lures 25 feet deep and suddenly you get into 20 feet of water, you're going to be snagging the bottom. So you need to know where those humps and points and timber is, so that you keep your lures out of snags and out of trouble. So when you first start tactical trolling, you might just start with 4 lures at a time, pulling left and right and down until you get a hang for how do you control the boat and all those subtleties there. Then you might step up to 6 lures at a time, then to 8 lures at a time. But after you fish a few times with 4 lures, you're ready to go to 6, and after you fish a few times with 6 lures, you're ready to go to 8, and after you fish a few times with 8 lures, you're probably ready to go to 9. But remember to pray, ask for the Lord's blessing, because Jesus said that all authority in heaven and on earth is given to him. So while mankind was given the job of ruling over creation, and we are kings and priests, if you want to say it that way, Jesus Christ is risen from the dead, and he's the King of kings and the Lord of lords. So we don't want to be out there trying to rule over creation without asking for his blessing and his assistance.